Hey gang, welcome back to Inverted Pursuits Laboratory. So it's actually been about 2 weeks now since I got married, which actually feels kind of weird to say, but that is what it is. We're coming up on that 2 week point. So actually about the time my last video was released is day before we got, my wife and I got married. And part of that, we had fun with a lot of different things around the wedding, making them space themed. There were quite a bit of 3D printed pieces there, but my personal favorite 3D printed addition that I did to the wedding was for the groom's cake. So I have a series of food allergies that allow me limit my food options, but it's not a huge deal. But there was basically a separate cake that we did as the groom's cake that was something I could eat versus the regular wedding cake that was something she could eat. And so my wife let me decide what I wanted to put on as the cake topper on that. And since I 3D print way too much stuff, I decided it had to be 3D printed. About the same time as we were figuring out the cakes, these cool little models, little Lucky 13 armatures, as they're called by, I believe, Sousaphone is the originator of this model. These little armature models that you can pose and position started to show up. And there were quickly a large number of modifications. Like I added a jetpack modification that you can find on Thingiverse, and I'll drop a bunch of links to all the Thingiverse files that I made for it. There were additions that you could add, like if you wanted a head with ears, you could add that to it. Sousaphone released it initially with a sword, had a little flag you could carry as well. Even some pistols, which I think are on there or something. This also had a little hat it came with. And so I started making modifications to it because I really thought this guy was cool. So like I made a little cowboy hat modification. I also made some cowboy boot modifications to go with it. And all of this stuff I've linked down in the description below. But I thought these were really cool. And I thought like two of these standing, back to back, one is me, one is my wife, would be just like the neatest thing on there. So I ended up making this guy right here. And the base is a standard part of the files you can download from the original creator. But this is basically my wife and I that I used as little posable armatures for our wedding cake. So it was a cool 3D printed accessory that you could use on almost any occasion, and by printing a bunch of them, I was able to make it look more natural. So like, I've got way more of these armatures than I know what to do with, because I ended up printing like 8 of them. Not to mention I've got a whole box of just parts to armatures. But I had a very specific look I was going for. So like I knew I wanted both of us to look like we were wearing denim pants. So for me, it looks like I'm wearing a blue jeans. So I printed 2 entire figurines actually in blue, which is why I've got a bunch of blue parts in an almost fully blue figurine here, except for like the legs that I still here, and they're what were used as my wife's like denim shorts. But I also printed several in like a tan natural skin color to give us our faces and necks and lower arms that wouldn't be covered by like a t-shirt, as well as my wife's lower legs. And then we both are wearing boots because she's a country girl and I have learned to wear boots. Very, very handy, especially when you're out in cornfields in the middle of Kansas and here in Missouri. You never know what you're gonna find out there. It's nice to have your feet protected, so like boots. And I also printed the little cowboy hat for myself, just to give it a little look. And of course, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I printed a little lightsaber blade. And now, like, the models for this lightsaber, you can find them on printables, and I'll actually go ahead and link all of this down below. I've probably said that a dozen times now, but the cowboy boots that I made, the lightsaber is something I made. There's even a jetpack that I designed for this. Also, the like hair, Kelsey's hair. I knew she shouldn't just have like a bare head because that'd be weird. She has really long blonde hair. So in this translucent yellow, I made a headpiece and I made a little cap piece down here to like end it. but then the rest of them are just like a standard shoulder joint that I use to make the hair braid look, and so it actually looks like a hair braid, and from a distance it all looks great. And then she's a shooting sports champion, so like I gave her 2 pistols to carry, and by printing a bunch of these in various colors, you were actually able to make like a figurine that looked really natural and really good. I did have a little trouble with like the hands. I originally wanted the hands to be tan, but I could only ever get my black hands to print. So we decided to make it look like we were wearing gloves. Like I'm wearing gloves with an orange backer. She's wearing gloves that look like they've got a cutout in it, so her back for hand was showing through. And I also printed a model that was, there's a female model that you can find. Like 90% of the parts for it are absolutely garbage. They look terrible, in my opinion. But the parts I liked for it were in the hips and lower torso. They gave the hourglass shape that a female tends to have versus the more blocky shape that a male has. And just by replacing those 2 parts gave my wife a much more feminine vibe in this figurine and myself a much more masculine vibe. And I really liked that just through changing 2 parts is all I needed to do. Otherwise the 2 of us look almost identical. We have some of the same parts. We did take some of the skin pieces off of my wife to make her look a little skinnier. So that was something that was her preference after we'd started putting these together. But I'll go ahead and drop in some photos of what this actually looked like on the day of our wedding on the cake here in the end. But like, I just wanted to show you guys that this was a really cool and simple way to make a center or a cake topper for your wedding if you're really into 3D printing. Also, you just end up with a bunch of figurines that you can do all sorts of crazy stuff with. At one point I very much had a like mass horror scene set up. It looked like zombies like crawling out of the earth, just because I got bored. So like, you can do all sorts of weird things with these figurines, but making a cake topper is what I chose to do with the Lucky 13 model by Sousaphone. There's a link in the description below. If you're interested in helping support the channel, please consider liking and subscribing. I'll see you all in the next video.